Welcome to the Flinn Gallery. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Barbara Richards and I'm chair of the Flinn Gallery. We've been closed since March, and since that time, so much has happened. The library has been under construction, and completion of that process will be around November. The library was also closed, of course, for the pandemic, and it isn't yet clear when the library will be able to open its doors to the public. But today, we're having a virtual opening for the first exhibit of the season, Material World. The Flinn Gallery Committee is still committed to bringing art to the community. We thank the Friends of the Greenwich Library for the funding of the committee. In addition, we want to acknowledge our warm, close relationship with the Greenwich Library. We feel so fortunate to have the wonderful support from our committee members and from the Friends and the library. I hope you enjoy our opening and our website at flynngallery.com. Now I'd like you to meet the curators for this exhibit.
My name is Nancy Heller, and I'm one of the co-curators of the Material World exhibition along with Katie Fennell. Katie and I would like to thank the members of the Flinn Gallery Selections Committee for identifying the three artists and bringing them together under the Material World theme. We'd also like to thank our committee member, Deborah Fram, for helping us with all aspects of planning and installing the exhibition. The three artists you will meet shortly all started their artistic pursuits with drawing and illustration, but turned to other media, 2 to painting and 1 to papermaking and fiber art. Jennifer Davies, the fiber artist you see pictured behind me, uses a diverse range of materials to create colorful, abstract works that suggest images from nature. The 2 painters, Leah Jew and Stephanie Serpic, bring the richness of materials, such as linens, fabrics, and everyday bed sheets, to life through color, composition, and texture. They help us see the beauty of these materials, but to also look beyond what is visible, to consider the layers of meaning behind what is absent and what is concealed by the fabrics. I'd like to introduce my co-curator, Katie Fennell, who will share more about the backgrounds of these 3 wonderful artists. Thank you.
Leah Jew is a Korean-American painter who moved from Seoul to the United States when she was 10 years old. Leah loved to draw and did manga art, but once here, she discovered that there was not a market for it, so she took a more classical route. Leah received her BA in art history from the Indiana University and also her Bachelor of Fine Arts in painting in 1994. She continued her education at the Yale School of Art, where she received her MFA in painting in 1996. Leah's work has exhibited widely in the United States and in South Korea, and she lives in Connecticut. And here's Leah.
My name is Leah Jew, and I'm going to talk about my influences and how I developed my painting. My influences come from many different places, and mainly art history, because I loved art history in college, and everything I know about European culture and religion is through slides in a darkened room. And if I didn't see it happen in a painting, I don't think it happened. So I had the pleasure of living across the street from Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in Kansas City a while ago. And there I fell in love with a painting by Raphael Peale, and it's called Venus Rising from the Sea. And it's a small painting of a female nude getting dressed or taking a bath behind a hanging sheet, for modesty. But when you get up close to it, you realize it's not a sheet, but it's a handkerchief covering the painting, and in a trompe-l'oeil style. And I love this idea of the trompe-l'oeil and the play of scale shift, going from sheet to handkerchief, something large to small, and the multiple ways that you can read that painting. And those are some of the things that I thought about in making these paintings here. What you see is a drapery, and it looks like an obstacle, and you're not sure if it's revealing or concealing. And behind it there's a goblin, a Korean goblin called Dokkaebi, and it's looking at us invitingly. And the thing that influenced this painting, that inspired me, was a photo I saw on the internet of Kim Jong-un, the dictator from North Korea. And he was celebrating his birthday, and he was on top of this mountain, Mount Baekdusan, which is a very important mountain in Korea, but it happens to be in North Korea. And it's an aerial shot of him standing victoriously in a full suit, with shiny shoes on top of the snowy mountaintop, looking glorious like a mythical god or a monster. And while at the base of the mountain, his people, his subjects, are starving to death. So I love this idea of having a stand-in, a monster that is fierce and menacing on the outside, but when you really get to the story of it, to the inside of it, you realize there's not much there. So this idea of concealment and revealing has been a constant theme in my work for a long time.
Stephanie Serpic switched from illustration to painting at Carnegie Mellon University, where she received her Bachelor of Fine Arts. She continued her education at the University of Chicago, where she received her MFA in painting. Like Jennifer and Leah, Stephanie has received grants from foundations and has also exhibited across the United States. She has also shown her work in galleries in London. Stephanie lives and works in Brooklyn. Andrew.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Serpic. I'm pleased to be showing here at the Flinn Gallery with the show is Material World. I have a series of oil paintings on wood panel. I started the series in the fall of 2016, very shortly after the 2016 presidential election, and I was feeling very overwhelmed at the time by all of the news in the world and the country. I was also going through some personal issues, some family issues, which was all feeling very overwhelming. And I was remembering at a time in my life when I'd been struggling with issues of anxiety or depression, and like a lot of people, I spent a lot of that time in bed. The bed was sort of a safe place, sort of a place to go to retreat. And remembering that, I was thinking of using the bed as a representation of kind of the feeling I was having, the feelings of sort of grief and then the healing, the subsequent healing. And it was, again, sort of like a place to go to kind of escape the rest of the world. And as part of that, I wanted to focus on the bed and kind of black out the rest of the area as a way of like focusing on the bed. The rest of the world is kind of out from my head. And I wanted to use the background not as so much a blank space, but as a way to show kind of the struggle, the work and the time involved in grieving and healing. So I use a process of putting down very thin layers of paint and then sanding them. And I do that many, many times. So it builds up kind of a visual texture. The paintings themselves are smooth, but you can kind of see, if you look closely, there's a little bit of work involved in the paintings. Source material for the paintings are through various image searches online. I kind of go through many, many images to find the ones that are appropriate for this project. As I've gone through the project, friends have sent me images of beds, and I have used them occasionally. I have taken photos of my own bed, but it has never worked out. My bed has never been good enough for these paintings, sadly. But the images are kind of from a various selection of places, and the idea that, the different sorts of beds represent different people kind of going through this same experience. So I hope you can come see the show. Thanks.
Jennifer Davies received her BFA in illustration from the Rhode Island School of Design. Drawing was her passion until she discovered papermaking in the 1980s. She experimented with paper pulp and with Japanese fiber and is taught at numerous schools and workshops in Connecticut and New York. Jennifer is also a woven fiber artist, and these pieces, along with her paper, hang in numerous corporate collections in the Northeast and in Dubai. Jennifer lives in Connecticut.
My name is Jennifer Davies, and my piece titled Night Gaze. I was always interested in fiber. It was not a central part of my life until later on, but as a child I was always making little quilts and pillows and embroideries. I didn't consider it fine art, but I certainly enjoyed doing it. And as a teenager, I had a long association with an artist in the neighborhood. And actually looking back on it, I'm not sure why I thought there was such a difference in the categories of fine art and craft, because she was somebody who knew no boundaries in art. She made masks out of paper bags. She painted on cards. She did whole embroideries on pillows of linear embroideries. She did do some cast paper. She did everything. But when I went to college, when I went to art school, I had a very classical education in fine arts. I continued to do all the little crocheting and knitting and this, that, and the other thing, but I practiced fine arts as a painter and printmaker. The subjects that I was mostly interested in were natural form, and I did many, many drawings and paintings of bark and trees and water and shells and so forth. And I think in an unconscious way I was building up a kind of vocabulary that I have been able to draw on now in paper making. So my first real experience with paper, not as a support, because certainly I used it and was interested in it as a watercolorist and a printmaker, but in the mid-'80s, Creative Arts Workshop had an exhibit of paper as art, and it just knocked me out. I'd never seen anything like it. There were huge paper pieces tumbling down from the balcony and things hanging, and very dense cast paper pieces. There was just so many different things you could do with this very common material that we all had. So I took a course that was associated with that. That was my first paper making course. And from then on, I started pulp painting, which was the transition from regular painting, went into Japanese art after that, and used this material that is used in Japanese paper making to make kozo. And the material I pull apart and make into these long strips that I then sew together.